Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. On today's show, I am thrilled to be joined by Raj Chipalu of Lakers Detailed, Silver Screen and Roll, Offside, Lakers Lounge, list goes on. Raj, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, Jovan. I'm glad. I told you yesterday at the game. Hopefully, they give us a win to talk about. And I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited that they did. It's been a really fun time to cover the Lakers right now.
It's been incredible, and I called it here with the on-screen overlay. The Lakers' magical March. The Lakers went 15-2 in March. They've won 16 of 18 overall. They have beaten some of the best teams in the league in convincing fashion. They had a couple of buzzer beaters along the way. They took care of business against some of the league's bottom feeders in blowing those teams out in wire-to-wire fashion. So just a great month for the Lakers. And now that we are a day past March and have a little bit of time to process and digest all of this, what stood out to you most over this month, and what were you most encouraged by with what you saw from the Lakers? We're going to touch on Luka a little bit later, so if that's the thing, then let's maybe table that for a little bit later. But maybe aside from Luka and his historic month, what were you most encouraged by, and what really stood out over March?
Yeah, it's tough to put Luka aside, right? He's kind of dominated.
It's a big aside.
Yes.
It's the biggest aside.
Right. Well, I think him having that historic month kind of takes away from a lot of the other stuff that's going on that people might not be noticing. But you mentioned kind of the record 15-2. That's the most wins by any team in March. I think the biggest thing, Jovan, and you've kind of hinted at this all year, is how are the big three playing together, right? I think that has been the major conversation all year. It was like, oh, do these three fit? And I think LeBron accepting this role of, hey, I'm going to be a guy that cuts. I'm going to be a guy that screens. I'm going to go in the post and get all my stuff in transition. Luka and Austin, this is your show. And JJ Redick also coming out publicly earlier in the season, he would kind of shy away from answering these type of questions, or like, hey, what is, LeBron's fit? He's like, he's still LeBron James. And as kind of, I think in March especially, he started really saying, no, this team needs Luka and Austin to be the high usage players for it to work. They were a plus 0.4 together before March. In March, they were a plus 18 together. And the biggest change is the 5-man lineup. So before March, the 5-man lineups that played the most with them was obviously Rui Hachimura starting with DeAndre Ayton. That flipped to Marcus Smart. And I think his just defensive intensity, while his offensive fit as well, I think that's an underrated part of this. His playmaking, the big shot making, right? Sometimes it's a roller coaster, but I think Marcus Smart being able to take big shots, all that combined with LeBron. And these guys are healthy. They played, I believe, 12 games together in March. The minutes are starting to climb for the season. I still think they're still only at around 21 games this year. And finally, I think JJ settled into his 9-man rotation. If you look at the minutes in March, after around Jake LaRavia, it drops to Jared Vanderbilt around 13 minutes. And that's, I think, on very special occasions. Then after that, it gets to Bronny, Maxi Kleber territory. So he's kind of found his 9 with Luke Kennard, filling that out as well. And this is a team that believes, that's what you catch in person. They are connected. This is a team that not only likes each other, but I think they believe that they have a team that can do something this year. So all those things put together are, made for a very successful March.
All well said. I think looking at the lineup data, you pointed it out, plus 18.4 net rating for the big three, and not only a plus 18.4 net rating, but the league's best offense and defense with them on the floor. Maybe right there with OKC for the best defense over the course of the entire season, but 124 offensive rating, 105.8 124.2 offensive rating, 105.8 defensive rating. Those are both elite marks. So it's not just been like the Lakers have been winning a bunch of shootouts and they've been relying on their offense, which is the clear strength with this group. It's been the offense and the defense. And they had a top 10 defense for the month, sixth best offense for the month, and that could have been even higher if not for some of the injuries and LeBron missing some time. And there's just a lot to be encouraged by right now. I think the thing for me that I would add to what you said would just be the statement wins, because this had been something that I was on for most of the season up until that like late February stretch of just the Lakers had not performed well against the best teams in the league. And there was this like, yes, the record was, I mean, they were right there as like I said it earlier today on Lakers Collective, from January 7th to March 7th, the Lakers flip-flop between the 5 seed and the 6 seed for 2 straight months, depending on whether they won a couple games, lost a couple games. They kept flip-flopping, but like they were right there hanging around. And then starting with that New York game, they went on this surge where they took over 5, then 4, then 3, and then once they grabbed the 3 seed, they have not relinquished it. But to me, it was the quality of wins along the way that really stood out, because prior to early March, they were 4-12 against teams with a 60% win percentage or better. And I know some people might think like, I think there's been some Laker fans who have not liked that metric, but it's just, it's the top 10 teams in the league. So like if you're if the best teams up to that point that you're beating are like the Clippers and the Sixers and the Raptors, I'm sorry, like that's not the team you're playing in round 1. You're playing the Timberwolves or the Rockets or the Nuggets. And like, you need to show you can beat those types of teams. And they did it. And they did it in convincing fashion, right? They blew out the Timberwolves in the third quarter. Denver, that was a close game, but they walked them down in crunch time and out-executed them. Houston, they out-executed them down the stretch in their home building. So like those wins, the Knicks and Rockets twice, Nuggets, even you could throw in Orlando and Miami with the context of that road trip. And then most recently now this Cleveland win, like they just had a slew of statement wins that I had been waiting for that version of the Lakers to show up and for them to rise to the occasion in the biggest moments, the biggest matchups of the season. And they basically won all of those games with the exception of a loss to Denver, a loss to Detroit. Like that to me was the most encouraging thing, because I think we had seen the flashes of everything else throughout the course of the season. This to me was like the final thing of, can you do it against the best competition? And up to this point they have.
Right. And I think, it's funny, at Lakers practice, Jackson Hayes and DeAndre Ayton came out together with Austin. They all three kind of spoke at the same time. And I said this before they did that, but the Lakers have moved into this center by committee approach. If you look at last year, there was a lot of small ball going on. And I think, some of the questions about this team are, hey, they were a 3 seed last year, right? They played a 6 seed in Minnesota where playoff, adjustments were made and they were unable to take advantage of a Minnesota team. I think this year, that's one of the biggest differences as well. When you watch against the best teams, Ayton, I thought was awesome against Denver, especially to close. He was the only guy, Jovan, that they allowed to play really in one-on-one against Jokic. And that's a huge add for a team where last year, again, I think Jackson Hayes also talking about things that are swept under the Luka wave, right? I think Jackson Hayes just being a better basketball player overall this year. He talked about putting on, everyone says they put on 20 pounds of muscle over the summer, but that doesn't really come out in their play. I feel like Jackson Hayes really does look the guy that's stronger. And, not just from I can bang bodies with the bigs in the league. It's more, I can gather and finish. I can gather and draw fouls. I can dunk through contact. I can switch and, not get bodied out of position by bigger wings. That type of stuff I think has helped. And, both of them have realized, which is, I think, that happens on a winning team. Either of them can close games. Jackson has closed, most of the games as of late, but DeAndre Ayton realizing that, hey, I can play well in the first, second quarter and I still may not close. And that's something that I think the center by committee approach, that they've gone through. I'm a little, I feel like JJ still wants to enter Maxi Kleber in this matrix in some way possible. he comes in.
Wait till game 5.
Right. He comes in some random times. I believe he came in the last possession against Detroit or something, like just some random points of the game. Maxi Kleber gets in. But other than that, it's been Jackson and Ayton who, Jackson being better than he was last year. And then just having DeAndre Ayton, his touch finishes at the rim, his ability to be a big body, against guys like Jokic and other bigs around the league, I think has, added to, then be able to get these wins like you talked about. That was a pretty flawless March in terms of we got to pass this test, in terms of Houston twice, Denver. Those are just Minnesota as well. Those are just all really big wins and has a team believing in themselves.
All right, we've buried the lead long enough. Luka Doncic, historic March.
Yes.
Posts the highest scoring month in Lakers history, which, I mean, that is as impressive as it gets when you look at the list of players that have played for the Lakers franchise. Averaged, rounding here, but 38, 8 and 8 for the month with 3 stocks exactly on essentially 50, 40, 80 shooting splits on the 40% on threes on just under 13 3-point attempts per game. I mean, that is Steph Curry level from deep. And it's like a Steph Curry, James Harden hybrid with the step backs plus the high volume and the efficiency. I mean, as JJ said last night, one of the best months of basketball we've ever seen from a player, point blank, period. I think because also the defense, like Luka's defense is always a big topic, but I thought we can debate how good he's been defensively for the entirety of the season. I certainly think he's been better lately than earlier in the season, but for the month of March, he was defending his ass off for the entire month. And like, I think really defending at a high level in addition to the offensive workload that he was carrying and the efficiency that he was doing it all with. So this is, it seemed like this was the month that finally got people to start talking about him as an MVP candidate, as a first team All-NBA guy, which I think he already should have been. But, I mean, even recently, there's still been people chirping about this guy or that guy above him. So just to take a step back with this month that he just had, and 600 points, second most points scored in March in NBA history and most in Lakers history. What did you make of this month, and tying it all together with the 15-2 stretch, 16-2 if you want to extend into late February? Like, how much has this played into your optimism with the Lakers going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm going to start with something that's not really, on-court crazy analysis, but something I try to tell people, because I think he's one of the few players and superstars, I think, that is very different on TV versus in person. Like, there's a play, his play style, I feel like, just feeds into the crowd. He's a showman for sure, but he plays into it. I just think his style of play, where it's a lot of creativity on the court. Some of it are, tough shots that he takes, but he's a guy that I always tell people, come and see him in person. I feel like the ref stuff also really is loud on TV, right? It's a little different in person. Now he does go out the refs a lot. Did it a lot less when he got his 15 technical, obviously, and was playing through that. But no, he was incredible. I don't even think the numbers do him justice. The 37 a game, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, the first quarter flurries that he puts on teams, and opposing coaches know Luka Doncic is coming out to put the foot on the gas, and he still is able to get 20, 22 points in first quarters. One of the most effortless scorers that I've ever seen, ever watched. Has every shot in his bag. His go-to being a pump fake, one leg floater that I truly believe in his head he feels is a layup to him, it's ridiculous to watch. And again, it's part of that you watch on TV and you're like, oh, that's a contested shot. But in person, you look at it, he's like, oh no, he actually got the separation he was looking for. The 3 pump fakes is actually him thanking you for not biting, so I can take my one leg fadeaway, step back. Just a ridiculous offensive player. I think the playmaking also goes underrated because of the high level shot making that he is. And again, I think he has a team that understands where his passes are coming from. I think my favorite part of the March, though, was his relationship with DeAndre Ayton now on the floor. They had a very tough start, I would say, in terms of the timing of the passes, but it feels like both of them have kind of understood their screen timing a little bit better. And yeah, he's just, the word I've been using this month is flow state. Like, there's a level of there's a level of calmness in his game. Nothing feels. JJ
called it clear-mindedness last night.
Clear-minded,
he's
yes.
got a clear head, yeah.
Right. And so he's just in a flow where nothing looks too difficult. He is reading the defense. He is taking what they give them. The Lakers had trouble with deep drop earlier in the year, right? That was a defense that was really able to kind of contain different teams with their physicality. last night the Cavs tried that, and he said, all right, like, you're going to chase over. Jared Allen's backing up. I have a step back available. You tag here. I have the weak side pass. It's just he's in such an offensive flow state that is going to be great going into the playoffs. And he's been the best offensive player to me. Like, obviously Shea's numbers are absurd, but at least in the month of March, I don't think there's been a player that's, had a better offensive, month than he did.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think he should win player of the month. I think he's been the best player in the world for, clearly the best. I mean, it's really like, I don't want to litigate the whole MVP situation, but like, it's been all anyone can really talk about. And I think we are really, ramping up here with like a historic stretch of, I think you can make a case legitimately for any of the 4 primary candidates, and you could order them in just about any order. And I think there's like a credible way to rate like each player, like, Shea, it's like, okay, well, he's having the most efficient 30-point guard, scoring season of all time. They're going to win 65 games. They've been the most injured team of the top 6 in the West. And, he has been better than he was last season, where it's like, if you win an MVP the next season to win a second MVP, you need to be better. Shea has been better. Luka, it's like, this was a team that a lot of people had 6 to 8 in the West and was in that 6 seed range up until early March. And he put them on his back, just carried them through, I think, probably the best stretch of basketball anyone has had this season. Like, if you just look at Luka's March, I think that is on par, if not better, than any 1 month stretch Shea has had, Jokic has had, Wemby has had. And then all season, he's been leading the league in scoring, top 3 in assists, and doing so on really efficient numbers. So it's like you have the Luka, like, best offensive player in the world, best scorer in the world, best offensive force, however you want to deem him. He's got that claim. Then you have Wemby, like, what he's doing on a per possession and per minute basis of, I mean, he's the on-off leader by far in this group, just in terms of on-off differential, second in the league in plus minus behind Shea. And he's doing so not even averaging 30 minutes per game. And the Spurs, I mean, for as low as people were on the Lakers, people were even lower on the Spurs. I went back and was looking through some of the preseason rankings and like the Vegas over-unders. Like, the Spurs could basically by consensus, like, lower than the Lakers, and they're going to be the 2 seed and win 60 games most likely. So like, that has a case. And then Jokic, I think his case has kind of flown under the radar lately, but like, he still basically leads every advanced metric and is going to potentially be the first player to lead the league in rebounds and assists, which is just an absurd stat. So like, it's so like, all 4 of those guys have a great case, but I think with when it comes to Luka, there's obviously, it's often through like a deficit lens of like what Luka doesn't do or what Luka can't do. And I think that's where some of the conversation around him feels disingenuous, where it's like, I think even with Luka fans, you don't have to necessarily have him as your MVP, but he clearly belongs at the table. He clearly is worthy of having the discussion about. And like, if you're not even willing to do that, then I just think it's not operating in good faith.
Yeah, I think the Jaylen Brown one is probably the one that tipped over a lot of the conversation, right? When you put Jaylen Brown, when you put him ahead of him in those type of conversations. Obviously, I don't have a vote. I guess Luka's, case to me, you mentioned it, the 46 wins, I think, was what the Lakers were projected at, right? They've obviously
somewhere 45, 46,
45, 46, and I think that should come into play at least a little bit. Oklahoma City, obviously, a better talent in terms of talent around Shea. The Spurs, you can make a case for Wemby for sure. I do think the under 30 minutes a game, that's just too low a threshold for me for an MVP winner. And Jokic, it could be a tie, but I feel like the tie goes to the team with the better record, right? So I would have him ahead of Jokic. That's just my personal feeling. I think it's Shea, then Luka, and I would bet Shea is going to win this award, and he's deserved of it.
I think Shea has it locked up. I know. Like, Laker fans don't want to hear that. Luka fans don't want to hear that. I think that's the situation. Now, look, they have an opportunity tomorrow. I think if they go in there and Luka drops a 40 piece and the Lakers win, like, the conversation is going to reach a fever pitch at that point.
Well, I would say he would have to sweep he would have to sweep OKC, right? They have 2 games left against them. Shea, I'm assuming he's going to play because the Spurs are not stopping anytime soon, chasing the 1 seed.
I still think he needs to play a few more games for awards eligibility too.
Okay, right. And so I remember like Kobe's MVP year, it was him versus Chris Paul. And they had I forgot when it was, but they had a late game, during the season. And that game kind of decided the MVP at the time. That was the conversation was, hey, they just beat the Hornets. I believe they locked up the 1 seed during that. And he took home the MVP. I'd be interested to see. Now, sweeping OKC is not, it's not easy. Splitting these is going to be difficult, but I'd be interested to see what the conversation turns to if he's able to, like you said, have a 40 point. I guess just hit his March average. And you said 40 points. That's pretty much just his March average. Can he hit his March averages?
But I mean,
right? Yeah, right.
We're splitting hairs here, right? It's still great.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, the thing with it too is like sometimes I'm a little reductive in my playoff analysis in terms of just. I think a lot of series come down to, as long as there's a relatively close distribution of talent between the two sides, a lot of series just come down to who's the best player on the floor for most of the series. Again, that's a bit reductive and that's not always reflected. You could go and find the exception to the rule there, but like more often than not, it is this player was the best player for the series and his team ended up prevailing. And I think with the way that Luka is playing, when we think about potential matchups in the future against San Antonio and OKC, those teams would clearly be the favorites on paper based on how their seasons have gone, the depth they have, the talent they have, the two-way talent they have. I think like even thinking about the ceiling version of the Lakers defense is just not as high as OKC or San Antonio defensively. OKC has one of the best collection of perimeter defenders I think we've ever seen together. To then add that in with like Chet and Hartenstein inside. And then you have San Antonio with this 7'7", 7'8". I don't even know how tall he is anymore. Yeah. Just alien who can control like half of the court just by standing there. And then you also add in some, like, I think Stephon Castle has a real all defense case that, he's one of the best perimeter isolation defenders in the league. So like Lakers can't get to that ceiling, but what they do have on their side is Luka, who I think can match, if not surpass, and I think could very well surpass Shea, Amano or Wemby. And that to me is like potentially the Lakers' trump card in all this of if they can keep things relatively close and it goes into a clutch situation. I know Shea's having a great clutch season. He's probably going to win clutch player of the year, but I think that's like the thing on the Lakers side, that they have the guy that I think has the highest ceiling in the league at least. And if he's at that ceiling, which he basically has been for the past month, like, it gives them a shot against anybody, in my opinion.
Yeah, you have a player who's, in the conversation for best player in the league. We both believe he's been the best player in the league for the last month, about 15, 16 games. You have that player in his prime. Like, that's going to give you a shot against any team. I think that's why the San Antonio matchup is interesting. They have all the on-court numbers, but all their guys have not been through a playoff series at all, right? Wemby has not played in the playoffs. You mentioned Castle. They do have De'Aaron Fox, who's touched the playoffs, I guess, with the Kings. That counts. The fourth. I forgot how long that Warriors series was. I think it went 7
games.
Actually.
It was a 7-game series.
Yeah, 7-game series.
Still,
Fox got hurt at the end in game 6 or 7. But so not a lot of experience on that roster. So I'd be interested to see NBA. Teams don't usually in their first year run through the gauntlet, especially the Western Conference. Interested to see how they react to the different, kind of ebbs and flows of a playoff series. They would be obviously favored in that. But yeah, you have Luka Doncic, and again, you have Austin Reeves, you have LeBron James, who, I'm sure you can already see the motivation on him. You can see the belief in his game, the adjustment that he's made. I think he's been, again, this all gets, and deservedly so, Luka's been absolutely historic is the term that everyone's using, which is, correct. But I think LeBron's had an awesome March. Austin didn't shoot, I'm sure, the three-pointer that he'd like to have had, but I think his kind of flow, and I think he's in a much better offensive rhythm, especially coming back from the injury. So, the Lakers are kind of going to war with that. Hopefully the pieces around come through. They, added the best shooter in basketball at the deadline. Rui Hachimura is having a really good shooting year. So the 9 guys I think they're gonna fight with, they give them at least a chance when you have the best player in the world on your side.
Let's talk about the OKC game because I think I'm very excited for this matchup. We are now under 24 hours away from tip-off. The tip-off is at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And this is a huge game for a variety of reasons. I think first and foremost, it's a measuring stick game for the Lakers. We've talked about the statement wins and how they finally started beating these teams after starting 4-12 against these 60+% win teams. It's now been 6-2 against that level of opponent. So they've completely flipped the script on that and been faring much better against some of the best teams in the league. But this is the best team in the league. This is the gold standard. This is the defending champs. They're probably going to win 65 games again. They have just an absurd collection of talent of like, I've been making this point lately, like they're 3, not even their only bench like guards that can play, but their primary 3 bench guards are Alex Caruso, Kayson Wallace, and AJ Mitchell. Like that is just, I mean, all those guys would be starting for like 26 of the 30 teams in the league. So they're this juggernaut that has been rolling through the season despite being very injured. And they present a real challenge for the Lakers of just looking through some of the recent stuff. Like even they've slipped a little defensively lately, but top 2 in opponent points off turnovers, top 2 in opponent fast break points, top 2 in opponent points in the paint. So like they are going to wall off the paint. They're not going to turn over the ball that much and let you get out in transition or get these early offense opportunities. And then defensively, they lead the league in points off turnovers and turnovers forced, and like so they're often winning the possession battle. So there's like the measuring stick part of this, but then there's also the stakes of it in terms of LA still trying to fight off Denver for the 3 seed, and every game down the stretch is going to be one game closer to LA locking that up. Then you have the MVP subplot of Luka versus Shea, and I don't know if Luka, with some of the discourse with him, I don't even know if him going into OKC and beating Shea and beating the Thunder would be enough to win him MVP. Yeah. But I would like to think that would at least sway some of the momentum in his favor. So there's also like, it's going to be an important game for Shea, and he sees Luka nipping at his heels in the MVP race. And then it's also an important game for Luka in terms of his standing in the MVP race. So I just think that the stakes of tomorrow all around, with LA just seeing how they stack up against the best team in the league stylistically, just the actual stakes with the 3 seed and the MVP race. Like I'm so excited for tomorrow's game.
It's going to be an incredible game. At least it should be, right, on the road in Oklahoma City. You look at these 2 teams just when they played last here, at Crypto. Austin Reeves was still coming off the bench because he was coming back from injury. No Luka Doncic that night. No Shai Gilgeous-Alexander either. So it was LeBron starting, and very strange game. Alex Caruso just put on a show, for against his former team. I believe he had 19. Was a plus-minus god.
It's again. Personal every time for Alex, and I don't blame him.
Right? No, not at all. But what I'm really interested is the defensive game plan. I believe Hartenstein will play. So they play you can't guard Shea like the Lakers did Kevin Durant a few games ago, right?
No.
Where they just blitzed him every single time. But what they have been doing, and they did this to Jokic, which again, it takes some guts to do this against a player like Jokic. They decided, you're not playing one-on-one. You get no one-on-one isolation baskets against us. We're negating every screen because we're switching every screen. We don't care if it's Luke Kennard, if it's whoever it is switching on you or fronting the post. And then we're sending a double on the catch. Now that's Nikola Jokic, who I think is the best passer in basketball, along with Luka and others. I'm interested to see what they do with Shea. I don't think they allow him to just play one-on-one basketball. I'm guessing they do a similar thing where they pick the shooter. They're, you kind of decide which shooter you're comfortable with taking open threes. Lou Dort is going to get, a lot of free threes. And I'm assuming that's the way this starts. And Lou Dort can easily knock down 4 threes in the first quarter and put you in a bind. But I'm guessing that's the game plan. And again, this is what's the whole conversation right now, Jovan, is like, should the season be shortened, right? Is the season too long? Players are sitting. This is Shea versus Luka. This is one of the most prime time matchups. This is in my opinion, the two best players in the league this year going against each other. And I think they kind of understand the situation as well. If you remember the game last year in Oklahoma City, the two games in OKC, the Lakers won the first one and I think almost stole the second one if Luka doesn't get ejected, late in a really
egregious ejection.
And awful.
I mean, they rescinded it. It was awful.
Right. They were walking down the Thunder. The Thunder went up big early, and it felt like the Lakers were going to take another one from them. So I'm super excited about this matchup. Again, they passed all these tests. Tomorrow to me is not a must win because I think they have given them enough cushion. Nuggets still play the Spurs a couple times going down the line, so you could afford a loss here. But yeah, to your point, the MVP conversation, the Lakers trying to keep on a roll and keep playing well. And this is the highest test, right? You passed all these tests against good teams. This is the best team in basketball. How do you fare up against this team? And I think there's a lot of learning from it. You get to play them again in a few days, and I think that's that's an advantage. You get to kind of work on things, look at the film against a team maybe you see down the line if you advance far enough. But these are you look at the wins in the last month and a half. The top three in the West are winning at just an absurd rate. I mean, both these teams are just don't lose. And so it'll be interesting how it looks tomorrow.
No, it's hilarious. I mean, I made this point last night on my show where I was like, Lakers coming off a 15-2 month, you would expect to be like, oh, well, they're clearly the best team in the West right now. They're playing the best basketball in the West. And it's like, well, OKC went 14-1 in March. San Antonio went 14-2. So like neither team played as many games as which is a testament to the Lakers' stamina for the month of. I mean, this was the toughest month of the season. Like when we saw the schedule back in August and we were looking ahead, seeing 17 games in 31 days, like that is unheard of. That is just a really difficult slate of schedule, and LA handled it incredibly. But a couple of injury notes that I think we have to touch on are Marcus Smart is out tomorrow. So Marcus Smart, I mean, getting a little concerned with this whole situation of JJ continues to say day to day, but then he also said that they want Marcus to be back 100% or feeling 100% before returning. So clearly he's not at 100%, but it's just like he is such a big part of what the Lakers are doing and plan to do. I think he's been their fourth best player this season. And you look at the lineup data, on, off, plus, minus, net rating, all that stuff. He has been leading the charge all season. And you mentioned it earlier, like when he replaced Rui in the starting lineup, we saw a real shift in LA starting to win first quarters, winning the opening shift with the starters. And that starting group has a plus 11.4 net rating on the season. So that group has been great. And I don't want to attribute it solely to Marcus, but Marcus he's got the secret sauce. He's got the Lakers play better on both sides when Marcus is out there. So Marcus being out is a huge blow for the Lakers. Like I would, it's tough to equate it to I almost consider it based on the depth between the two teams. It's almost like OKC missing two starters or maybe a starter and a key bench guy. I think he's that important to the Lakers. But then speaking of that, OKC, Alex Caruso is now questionable with an illness that he is battling. So I mean, that would be a big loss on the OKC side because, as you mentioned, he killed the Lakers in both of the two previous games this season. So I don't think it's necessarily a like for like. Yes, I think Caruso's just at a different level because he's might be the best perimeter defender in the league or in that conversation. But just based on how important Marcus is, that's a huge, he would have been the SGA primary defender for tomorrow night. And now they don't have that.
100%. Marcus Smart will definitely be missed. You were talking about the starter lineup, and I think it's not just Marcus Smart starting. To me, Rui, LeBron, Ayton is just so slow like that. There's a speed component to me where that starting lineup just walks the ball up the floor. There's not a lot of movement. I think Marcus gives it a jolt. Now, sometimes that's too strong of an energy bolt. There's some plays that he does where it's a little wild, but I like that he's not scared to shoot. And I think that's important in crunch time, for a team that, they're going to create wide open looks. You need guys that aren't, that the moment is not too big for them. I've never felt like Marcus Smart, was kind of shying away from the pressure of it. So he will be missed for sure. Lakers, though, again, they aren't letting these stars play one-on-one. Not that Marcus Smart wouldn't have had an impact, but just a lot of switching going on where even if Smart starts on Shea, there's going to be very few times where the shot SGA takes, the shot KD takes, the shot who's the star on the other side is going over Smart. That's going over someone else. It's going over multiple bodies.
I think it's the help defense though for me with like the charges, the deflections, the he's so good at those. And really it's like infiltrated the team in like the best way of the guy gets by you and you just swipe from behind and poke the ball loose. Like they have collectively been doing such a great job with that over the last couple months in a way that they weren't as strong in early in the season. And Marcus is a guy who leads the charge in that. So I think it's not just like, I do think it's partly the point of attack on ball defense and his ability to keep guys in front, but also funnel them to certain spots. But to me, it's also he's going to take a charge. He's going to get his nose dirty in the paint. Like he's going to do all these little things that they have other guys who can do that. And collectively they all need to do that. But like Marcus does it at the highest level.
Right. And he also brings a component of basketball IQ on the defensive end that's really important, right? From DPOY winner. And again, with all the switching, the zone looks that the Lakers have been doing, all these different type of coverages, they'll go zone, then man, and like the same possession. You need guys who can kind of read and react on defense. So I'm with you. I do think Marcus Smart will be a big miss, but I think the Lakers have a shot tomorrow. They have a bunch of guys that are, in my opinion, playing their best basketball of the season at the right time. Rui's playing, I think, his best basketball. Jake LaRavia got a couple threes to go finally, and so hopefully that kind of gets him going. But he's been doing he's kind of filled in for Smart, and he's been the starter, when Smart isn't out there. But his kind of length on the defensive end, I think, has helped with his 6'9" wingspan. But Lakers will definitely miss Marcus Smart. If Alex Caruso is out, I do think that helps too. Caruso is one of the best. It's sad. Like, this is a sad statement, Jovan, but Caruso is one of the best LeBron James defenders in the league. Like when he guards LeBron, and maybe this is because he's, a lot of players have practiced with him, but there's a level of Caruso kind of knows him in a way where I feel like he's the way he picks up full court. And this is a component as well. Oklahoma City is allowed not to, this isn't to discredit anything they've done, but they are allowed a level of physicality that I think an opponent has to get used to. Like when you play them, there's a level of physicality that the game reaches, and Lou Dort makes sure of that right away. Some plays are questionable if they're basketball plays, but Lou Dort kind of ups that physicality, and the whole team follows suit from Kason Wallace to Caruso, as we mentioned. There's just a very, very physical type basketball team. So that's going to be interesting as well. I think the Lakers have talked about this when they played OKC previously. You got to not only match their physicality, but set your own tone. And that's gonna be tough to do without Marcus Smart. But I think they have a chance tomorrow.
Lakers also can't lose their cool tomorrow. I look at Luka, I look at Austin, I look at JJ, I look at Jackson, I look at DA. Like, everyone collectively cannot, because there's going to be the obvious play where Lou Dort does something dirty against Luka. They don't call it, and like, everybody has to remain calm and not overreact to that, because I think that's part of, we see teams unravel against OKC because they do know how to kind of game it or leverage it, where they dictate the terms of physicality and engagement, and they kind of benefit from both sides of, they can maul you and get away with it, and then they can also draw a bunch of contact and fouls on the offensive end, and then it just gets frustrating. I think it's interesting because the Lakers do get a pretty good whistle, and the Lakers get to the free throw line a lot. So that there is like the element of like one of the best foul drawing teams in the league going up against probably the best team in the league in terms of getting away with contact. So like it's sort of an unstoppable force meets an immovable object there in terms of who's going to win out. Like, are the Lakers going to get the 30 free throws, or are the Lakers going to get 15 free throws and OKC is going to get away with a lot of contact?
Yeah, and their defenders get a lot of benefit of the doubt, right? There's a lot of reputation in their defenders where they get a lot of benefit of the doubt on the calls. Some of the calls I think you don't get against OKC are the ones where, you put your defender in jail and you kind of jump into them to shoot. Maybe you get that call, maybe you don't. Oklahoma City
which are like Luka and Austin both do that a lot.
Well, absolutely. And those are fouls on a lot of nights that you're going to get 15, maybe free throws a night. I think against Oklahoma City and these physical teams that, again, as you mentioned, set the tone, those are calls you probably just aren't getting at a consistent rate, and especially not down the stretch, right? If this is a close game, those aren't calls that they're really going to hand you. So that's something they're going to have to look at as well. Again, Shea is going to be a frustrating guy to guard. He got called for a push off a couple, games ago, which is kind of surprising. They still wound up winning that game in overtime. In overtime. But yeah, I think that's a big part of this. The referees, kind of staying out of the referee game and just playing your game, executing your game. And I think they do have advantages against Oklahoma City. Now, OKC has the better team, but Chet Holmgren is a guy that, LeBron has gone at least in pick and rolls, a guy that's a tough guy to switch against him. Luka likes to hunt Shea. Now, Shea's a really good defender, but I think Luka does like that matchup in kind of a singular way. That's something that he'll go to. But I think it's important that, a guy like Austin drives, like they need his driving game against Oklahoma City. They really bait you into like 3-pointers that you think are open, and they're one of the best closeout guys and closeout teams in the league. So just a basketball team that has kind of figured out the regular season. They're a regular season machine. So to beat them, a lot of things have to go right. And a lot of things kind of have to go wrong for them. So we'll see tomorrow.
I also think it's worth mentioning, you were focusing on the defensive end, which I am fascinated by of how they guard Shea and what the game plan from JJ is. But I'm also fascinated by the offensive end because this is one of the best offenses in the league, maybe the team with the highest offensive ceiling in the league in the Lakers, right? Probably right there with Denver for best potential offense in the league versus the best defense in the league. And I think like this is the ultimate test for the Lakers offense, where we have seen them execute at a high level against some of the best teams in the league. And several of those teams, looking at New York, Minnesota, Houston, all high level top 10 defenses when the Lakers played them. So like they have gone toe to toe and slayed the dragons of some of the best defenses in the league. And, whether it's Luka going at Anunoby or Amen Thompson or Jaden McDaniels, like Luka has been able to have, do whatever he wants against some of the best perimeter defenders in the league. But this is a different test, and this is a test that the Lakers have failed twice this season. And I look at the first couple games. First game, they had 20 turnovers. Second game, they had 15. That's better, but still not good. Austin had 5 turnovers in both of the games. So like that's going to be another subplot, is like if Austin's being hounded by Kason Wallace and AJ Mitchell 94 feet, like how does he handle that? And he's not handled it well up to this point in like this specific matchup, outside of like, I would say the first half of the second OKC game, he played well, but first half in OKC did not play well. Second half against OKC in LA right before All-Star break did not play well. So Austin has got to kind of like, there's the Austin component of how does he play against the best teams? How does he play against the most athletic, physical teams? So just from the Lakers offensive side, I think like if they can if they score 120, 125 on this defense, like that to me means something at a higher level than them doing that against just about anybody else.
Yeah, OKC is a full court ball pressure team. They pressure you pretty much all game. They don't let your ball handlers live at all. I think, and that's where I think intention, like being intentional with your offense, is very important against a team like OKC. Now, again, we mentioned Luka's in this flow state, and I think he still, can have a successful night against them. But I do think there has to be intention how you score on them. Again, I talked about they've mastered the regular season, so they're the best team in the league to me. If you're operating at the top of the key, their defense is such in sync that like their help, where the help's coming from in terms of where the rim protection is coming from, the weak side guy is coming over every single time. They are just in lockstep, where it's going to take 2 to 3 passes probably to get the open shot. And this is a team you just don't want to be settling for. But to your point about the offensive ceiling, I mean, again, these lineups with Luke Kennard next to, Luka and Austin, they just have really high offensive ratings. I think they found stuff with him where he's the one guy that you can run actions for, right? He's the one, and JJ talked about this. I asked him about kind of Luke Kennard's screening. He's like, we didn't really have a shooter that we can run stuff for before him. And I think that's useful against a team like OKC. You want to kind of get them moving, kind of force mistakes. This is not a team you want to just isolation score on. They're too good defensively for that. Their help will be there. You mentioned the turnovers. I think Kason Wallace, Alex Caruso, we'll see if he plays. Those guys are just too good to go one-on-one, try to go through them, go through the wall of their defense. Chet Holmgren is one of the better rim protection in the league. Hartenstein's really solid. So, but yeah, it's gonna be a lot of pick and roll. You know, Aiden's gonna have to be aggressive on those short rolls. They're very comfortable.
He's not played well the two previous games against them. So this is a test for Ayton as well. And Jackson, I think this is more of an Ayton matchup than a Jackson matchup because of their. I think the Lakers have some physical advantages in the front court with Ayton and LeBron and LaRavia and maybe Rui if he can leverage some of his strength. So and Luka, of course. I was thinking more front court, but if they can leverage some of the size and physical advantages, that would go a long way in them, because you could win the rebounding battle against OKC. That's an area of the possession game that you can win against them. And they're just not outside of they start the Twin Towers, and then Jalen Williams has been playing great off the bench. But outside of their three bigs, most of the rotation is 6'6", 6'7", and below. They don't really have a lot of guys in that 6'8" to 6'10" range. So I think the rebounding is an area the Lakers can take advantage of if everyone's locked in and playing their hardest. And I think this is a big test for DA as well.
Yeah. I think, his touch around the rim, this is kind of one of the reasons he was signed, is to counter switches, right? Counter teams that are comfortable putting their big man on Luka and Austin. And OKC, again, one of the best in the league of, my wing is on your 7-footer, but it is not a mismatch at all. Lou Dort on your team's big man is just not a mismatch to them. They'll live with that all day. But, Ayton's skilled enough, I think, to finish around that, to have a solid game. I do think Jackson's verticality is important. Give that look to the team, that, that rim threat. I think one of the best vertical spacers in the league this year. You can throw it anywhere for Jackson. He'll catch it and finish it. I think that's very useful to kind of, again, you want different options to create open shots on this team. They're just too good to give them a diet of one thing. They're gonna figure that out and figure you out, and you're gonna lose by 20 plus. So yeah, a lot of those, you're gonna have to have good nights from a lot of guys. But again, the Lakers are playing well. Both teams are, had a very dominant stretch for themselves. We'll see tomorrow. And again, the Luka, Shea, I do think both those guys understand the assignment. These are two guys that believe they're the best scorer in the league. Luka will have the scoring title. That's, I think, locked up. I'm pretty sure. But those two guys feel like they're the best offensive engines in basketball, and I think you're gonna see a show tomorrow.
All right, a couple more here before we get into the Q&A and wrap. Final one on OKC. I was surprised by this. Sometimes for some of these big games, I like to look up the lines and how Vegas is viewing the matchup. Okay. The Thunder are 8.5 point favorites tomorrow. That's a pretty big margin.
Oh yeah.
I was surprised by that. I thought maybe it'd be, 5.5, 6.5, but the 8.5 is pretty. It's a pretty big margin. So I mean, of course, that doesn't mean anything because you actually have to go out and play the game. But in terms of tomorrow and the results of tomorrow, winning the game obviously would be the best outcome and would show that the would just continue to legitimize everything we've seen from the Lakers over the past month. And I think really be that would of course be the best win of the season, and going into the playoffs be the thing that you can really hold on to and be they went into OKC, they beat OKC in a must-win high-stakes matchup for both teams. And that gives you a certain amount of confidence. So let's put that outcome aside. Outside of winning the game, what to you would constitute progress or optimism, and kind of what are you hoping to see tomorrow outside of course, a win?
Right. Yeah, you don't really want moral victories at this time of the season. But I remember when they played Denver at home, right? I think that which kind of kicked off all of this. I feel like the beating of good teams. I just thought that you could not get blown out in that game. I just even with the trauma of Lakers Nuggets, and I think they've had a better record against Denver since the Luka trade. But all that still aside, you could not get blown out on your home floor by the Denver Nuggets. It was a big matchup. It had a lot of seeding purposes as well. Obviously, the Lakers won that one. I feel the same in this game, pretty much. Just I'll take anything besides an OKC absolute, blowout win. I think again, you don't want to say this. The team, I'm sure, doesn't feel this way, but OKC just has a lot of inherent advantages. They have a continuity advantage, right? They've been playing together forever. I am 100% certain they will be motivated, which I don't think they are nightly, which is why Shea has this this montage of game winners against teams that probably games that should not be close, like against the Warriors without Steph. These type of games that they're playing in. Tomorrow will not be that type of game. Tomorrow, Oklahoma City will 100% be motivated to win, even with Alex Caruso out. They'll put their best foot forward. So like a close game where you could see stuff to build on. And I think the biggest thing is, seeing, you want the role guys to play well, but do LeBron, Luka, and Austin kind of find their rhythm in this game? Do they impact the game? Do they impact their matchup, their portion of the game? I think that's more important than the win-loss against Oklahoma City. I think the Lakers have enough of a cushion where they can afford an OKC loss. That's kind of baked into the equation of the schedule, when you play the Thunder. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. Do those three, what's been working against good teams up to this point, can you put that on the plate against the best team in the league, and have that be something you can use?
I like that. I think to just add a couple things on that, like I am interested to see, to your point earlier, like how the defense looks against Shea and what the game plan is, how OKC counters that. Because I think OKC, especially with J-Dub missing a lot of the season, like they have been facing a lot more doubles for Shea, and teams having the game plan of, we're just selling out against Shea tonight. We're going to live with 4-on-3 basketball and, play the odds there. I think OKC, Denver did that against OKC in their most recent matchup. And it kind of worked, but it kind of OKC was, you had Jalen Williams hit, I think he hit 8 threes in that game, something crazy. And McCain hit some big shots, Isaiah Joe. So it's they have their counters to that. So I'm interested in the chess match of, I think LA will have their initial look, then the Thunder will have their counter to that, and then what do the Lakers do? Because actually, this is also a team you can play zone against. In when I'm thinking about the Lakers and their zone and what they've been building towards, Denver has had a lot of success against OKC playing zone. That's been almost their primary coverage against OKC in their matchups going back to last season. Part of me has wondered, have the Lakers been sharpening this zone option for OKC in particular, because Denver's had so much success with it, and Denver, of course, is limited defensively. So it's that, with OKC, especially the starters having some limited shooting out there, that might be a look that the Lakers could go to and have some success against them. So that part of it, of course, the Luka Shea dynamic of, I think Shea outplayed him in the first matchup in OKC. Shea had 30 points on 10 of 18 shooting. Luka had 19. I don't remember his shooting numbers, but Shea was the better player. So Luka could get his lick back in this game. And then I would say Austin and in general, the turnovers, the team not being rattled, Austin not having 5 turnovers like he's had in each of the first 2 games. And then DA would be another one of just how does DA look in, it's going to be a pressure cooker tomorrow. It's going to be, huge game, nationally televised, big stakes. How does, I don't want to say it's a game 7, but it's almost like a game 1 vibe. And how does everyone perform?
Right. And I think the Lakers are playing in a totally different space than they were when they played OKC last. And I mentioned the injuries, right? Austin was still coming off the bench at that time to give a picture of where they were. Luka Doncic didn't even play in that game. But building off your zone point, we spoke about Eaton and Hayes. I do think OKC is a team that, when Chet is at the 5, I think JJ likes to go small. I think he likes the LeBron, Rui at center, with maybe Kennard, Luka, and Austin, and just space out, right? Make them guard you, allow Luka, LeBron, and Austin to have these driving lanes, and kind of believe that you can get back to Chet at the rim. You can kind of force him with physicality. I think they trust LeBron on Chet, as a defensive matchup. So I'd be interested to see how much small ball they go to. JG's been throwing it in a little bit here and there within the center by committee, but I think OKC is a team that, again, you mentioned it, their offensive numbers are insane. You got to be able to, we can talk about the defense all we want. You got to be able to score. You got to, keep up offensively with them. Yeah. There's a level of, it was like playing Denver a few years ago where the conversation was, their defensive rating. It's they score at such an absurd amount that if you can't keep up offensively, you can have 5, all defense defenders out there. It's not really it's not going to catch up. You're not going to be able to catch up to them. And I think OKC is in this similar spot where as many of the stuff you can do on Shea, he shooting like 55% on mid-range pull-ups. Like he's just a ridiculous offensive player. They're going to score at a rate where you're going to need to have these offensive lineups out there to keep pace, keep up, match the 3-point output that they do. JJ mentioned kind of the ghost screens with Isaiah Joe, the amount of split screens they do with Isaiah Hartenstein. They're just a very connected basketball team. Mark Daigneault has them, playing just incredible basketball. So those things I'm kind of looking for, but I like the zone point because you can go small with the zone. I think that's something the Lakers really like to do. It allows Luka not have to move that much on defense. I think that's an advantage as well. He can kind of stay in spots instead of have to chase around guys. And I think that kind of helps a lot of their defensive, their guys who aren't as defensively talented have a successful defensive scheme to play against. But I'm excited. This is what the season is for. This is the whole point. You have the 1 and 3 seed playing each other in a game that matters for both of them. Adam Silver, sell this game as much as you can. Can we get some better promotion around the league than the league? The league's in trouble and needs all these changes. I'm excited for this game tomorrow.
And we got a comment here from MJ that transitions us into the last topic before we get into the Q&A. So MJ notes that Minnesota dropped back down to 6 today because Houston won. And Houston's quietly been playing better basketball. They had been in this malaise for weeks, coinciding with the Kevin Durant burner situation and the All-Star break. But they've won 4 in a row. They're 6-4 in their past 10. And they have now jumped up to the number 5 seed. Technically, Houston and Minnesota are tied in the loss column. They have 1 game remaining. It's the second to last game of the season for both teams. So that might actually be the biggest remaining game of the season from like a standings perspective, at least in the top 6 in the West. That's a huge game that will almost certainly determine the 5 seed and the 6 seed. So with that context, like Denver's been rolling. They've won 6 in a row. Yeah. They're still not that much ahead of those teams. They're playing Utah right now. I think they're going to win that game. They're up 8 with 8 minutes left. But let's just assume like Denver's got an easier schedule than Minnesota and Houston. They're playing better than both those teams. Denver's probably going to lock up the 4 or at a minimum be in the 4-5. So putting Denver to the side and looking at Minnesota and Houston, where are you at with the potential first round options? Are you just sort of like bring on either one? Do you have a preference? And I think we have to factor in the context of Lakers went 2-1 against Houston this season. They went 3-0 against Minnesota. Minnesota now lost Jaden McDaniels, who's week to week. So that's sort of a wrench in all of this in terms of, I mean, if you give me Minnesota without Jaden McDaniels, I might take that matchup. But like, I don't know what we got 11 days left in the regular season. I don't know if he's going to be back by game 1 of the playoffs. So like, with just a lot of the uncertainty here with the 5 and 6 seed, where are you at with Minnesota versus Houston, and which team do you think would be the better first round matchup for LA?
Yeah, I think the Lakers would be favored in either of those series. They'd obviously have for home court. I'd rather play Houston, though. I think there is something to beating that team twice on their home floor when they needed those games as well, right? There's a mental advantage you get against a team like that, and I just think the Lakers have they have too many advantages against a team like Houston. They have too many defensive schemes they can go to. They just don't have the offensive firepower. We talk about Lakers OKC. I just don't think Houston has the offensive firepower to keep up with the Lakers in a 7-game series. Lakers will not let Kevin Durant play 1-on-1 that series. They're going to have to play 4-on-3. Now, Sengun is going to be, he's played well, but I think that's a matchup the Lakers like and feel like they can pick on the other end as well. So it's just a lot of advantage, I feel like, against Houston. Not that they would be a walkover, but, I think they're the more favorable team that you would like. Minnesota, even with their struggles this year, I would pick the Lakers over them. They can reach a physicality like point that, in a series really takes a toll. Thought we saw that last year. Now Luka's in better shape this year. I think, LeBron and Austin and Luka are, playing at a level much higher than they were a year ago. They have centers they trust, at least for right now, before going to that series. But Minnesota still, I think they just have these advantages where, Julius Randle went nuts last year and a lot of his advantages continue this year. And Anthony Edwards, I think he's obviously lost some stature in the league with the Minnesota with Minnesota's season, but I think he has a playoff level he can get to that a 38-year-old Kevin Durant just can't get to anymore. I think KD's 38. But Anthony Edwards has being in the prime of his career, was in MVP talks, not this year, but these last few years. He just has a level he can also get to, and we saw that in the series, right? A lot of games the Lakers thought they had. Anthony Edwards took it, took victory from their hands with shot making that he was able to do. And Gobert's has a strange reputation, but that's still a walking dominant defensive big man. So they have these pieces where their team doesn't really match the talent right now. There's something strange has gone on with them. You mentioned Jaden McDaniels being out, but I still think they just have a lot of guys, and they're a very physical team that I would rather just stay away and rather go to Houston, where they just look like they have a lot of internal issues before you even get to the basketball issues that I think the Lakers have a lot of advantages against.
I agree with you. I've been firmly on the side of I'd rather play Houston than Minnesota. I am softening on that stance with the McDaniels injury. Like I think if you told me McDaniels was out for the series, I think I might prefer Houston.
Sure.
I still think with Edwards and Randall, there's more of a proof of concept there compared to KD and Şengün together, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this goes against the numbers because for the season, Houston is 10th in offensive rating, Minnesota is 12th. But sure. I just think Minnesota has a higher offensive ceiling. And I think if you get into the turnovers, you get into the three-point shooting, like those are a couple areas where Minnesota has a real edge over, like before the season, Minnesota's 19th in turnovers, Houston's 27th. So neither one, it's like a strength for them, but Houston, bottom 4 team in turnovers. And then three-point shooting, Minnesota is 5th in three-point percentage. Houston is all the way... Where is Houston? Houston's technically 8th, but the volume is right. The difference there, where Houston's 28th in volume, Minnesota is 17th. So like they're more middle of the pack. But like, I just think defensively, they're relatively similar. Of Houston's going to be more switching and mm-hmm. their army of Thompson, Smith, Durant, Eason. They've dusted off Jason Tate recently, and like mm-hmm. so that the Okogie, like they got a bunch of perimeter guys who could switch across multiple positions, and then they're trying to protect Şengün and Reed Shepherd. With Minnesota, it's more funneling, using the size and length to funnel to Gobert. So it is like different defensive styles, but I think their defensive ceilings are relatively similar. They're both physical. They're both good rebounding teams. They're both going to beat the Lakers up a little bit. But when it comes to the offensive end, I think we've seen a certain ceiling from Minnesota, both this season and in general. And like in the playoffs, they made back-to-back conference finals. So like, I'd put it this way. If you like, just from a psychological perspective, if the Lakers lost game 1 to Houston, I would be unfazed and still think like, sure, it's not great. It's not a great start to the series, but like my prediction would probably go from Lakers in 5 to Lakers in 6. If Lakers lost game 1 against Minnesota, and this is of course with LA having home court,
right?
I would start to wonder, like, are they back in LA's heads now? Like putting the regular season aside, they're now 5-1 in the past 6 playoff games, like with 2 relatively similar groups. Like that would be a little bit more concerning. So I do think I think Minnesota's ceiling is higher, basically, is what I'm getting at. And like the McDaniels thing does put a little uncertainty here for me, but I still think I'd rather play Houston.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also Houston they're below the level of playmaking baseline you need, in my opinion, in the playoffs, right? Obviously, Kevin Durant is a all-time top 10 level player, but that's just not at 38. You don't want Kevin Durant being your main ball handler. Amen Thompson has not taken the offensive leap that I'm sure Houston was expecting. Now they do run a lot of stuff through Şengün. Again, I think that's something that the Lakers are willing to live with and be able to shut down. And he's been better this year, but I do think in a playoff series, you can kind of physically go at Şengün in a way where Minnesota comes in with Naz Reid, who was absurd last year in the playoffs as well. Did not miss, I think, in fourth quarters of the playoff games. And you have obviously Rudy Gobert, who again, DeAndre Ayton and Jackson, Jackson was available in that series, but DeAndre Ayton I would think will help. But again, Rudy Gobert is such a physical force in terms of his impact in a Lakers series. Now that's a guy that Luka likes playing on switches. So that's an interesting kind of matchup there. But yeah, I would just go with Houston. Again, they're not a walkover either. That like the West is the West because of this, right? There's just no easy matchup unless you're, even Phoenix in the first round or the Clippers with Kawhi, who's playing incredible. Those aren't walkover teams either, but at least the 2 seed.
No.
Yeah. But the gap from like who the 1 and 2 play versus 3 through 6 mauling each other out. Like there's a difference there to me of equality of those teams. It feels like Lakers, and I think the Lakers are better than these teams, but Minnesota and Denver aren't that far from where the Lakers are. And that's kind of played out in the wins, right? In terms of the standings as well. So yeah, I'd rather play Houston. If they play Minnesota, I think they'll beat them. I think that's just a much more challenging series. There's going to be a lot more that like JJ is going to have to be an incredible coach that series. Minnesota obviously has a lot of film on the Lakers, and I think what's important, they have a lot of playoff film on the Lakers. Like this is just a lot of stuff that they can go to, and I'm sure have some confidence when you beat a team in 5 games, as close as those games were. There's a level of confidence you go into it with. And again, Anthony Edwards is in his prime, a super offensive superstar, and Kevin Durant I think has had an incredible year, but he's just at he's 38, and I think that's
different stages of their career. So it's okay to say that, right? And quickly looking it up because there's some commentary in the chat about the clutch stuff. Minnesota is 17-13 in the clutch, so a 57% win percentage for Minnesota in clutch situations. Houston is just 19-22, a 46% win percentage in the clutch. I know like Minnesota. Look, Minnesota's team Jekyll and Hyde. You just never know what you're getting from them. And like I thought, I know we often look at things from like the Lakers side. Like I thought, in that game against the Lakers, especially in that third quarter, Minnesota at some point just let go of the rope and was like, we're not winning this game. Like, we don't really care anymore. And they do have a little bit of that quality to them, but we see them galvanize in a different way in the playoffs. And I think Houston is the team that I think if you punch them in the mouth, they're going to roll over. And like, we saw them crumble in crunch time against the Lakers in both situations. So, I mean, they don't really have a point guard. Like, it depends how you feel about, I like Reed Shepherd. He's somewhere in between a 1 and a 2. He's a 1.5. I don't think he's like a traditional point guard or forget like point guard, but even like lead ball handler, playmaker. I think he's more of a secondary guy. So that's like their fatal flaw. And look, Minnesota doesn't really have it either. So I guess like that's where the Lakers have some advantages against both teams. Is I think you can do the trapping and blitzing that the Lakers have done against Ant and KD, and you can get away with it because they don't have the collective passing to really make you pay for that. But I would favor the Lakers in either matchup. I think my official prediction as of right now would be Lakers over Rockets in 5, Lakers over Wolves in 6. Like those would be my so I see it like a matter of 1 game difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. And just one of the issues you mentioned, Reed Shepherd, he's my favorite prospect on their team. Houston's fans have complained all year, why doesn't he play more? And I think part of it is because him and Sengun just are kind of a fatal together defensive combination. So that's one of the advantages as well. Again, I think there's just a lot of stuff you can go through with Houston before you even get to the off-court stuff with them. They rely on, I feel like, a lot more young guys or at least guys who aren't battle tested in this way. I think that bears out in the clutch stats as well. The game they lost to Minnesota the other night was a few weeks ago or whenever that was I think they were up 12 or something in overtime and still blew that game. And so, they just have a lot of, I feel like, issues with their basketball team, especially, and that you can kind of leverage in a series where Minnesota, like all their stats and stuff, when you go series by series, it's all about matchups. And the Lakers like to switch a lot, and Julius Randle destroys those type of stuff. Like that he is a absolute problem. No matter, I think the Lakers would win the series, but that's just a matchup issue that I feel like I'm not sure if he had a bad game in the playoffs last year against the Lakers. I feel like he was awesome. So that's one of the issues I see playing against Minnesota. Lakers are better this year. They have a better team. They're more connected. I still just let's get Houston in round 1 and have a little bit better of a easier matchup.
All right, going to do a few minutes of Q&A and get you out of here. Appreciate your time, Raj. First one from Zach Wan. Thank you for the super chat. MVP is based on narrative, like Embiid with color story, SGA with best team convo, and Luka defense. story, despite carrying LA, prevent any real chance of MVP. So the premise of this question is narrative plays a big role in who wins MVP. Do you agree with that? And with this MVP race, do you like how much do you think that is playing into it seemingly being, at least right now from a betting perspective, it's Shea 1, Wemby 2, Luka 3, Jokic 4. How much do you think narrative is factoring into that ranking?
Yeah, I think narrative factors into a lot of things, and included is the MVP race. This was probably decided months ago. One of the things I like to say is the Lakers don't get talked about like a team that's X games over 500, and now they are 24 games over 500. I feel like reality has not caught up to the narrative on this team, especially with their defensive conversations and things of that nature. But yeah, with the MVP is no different. That doesn't mean the narrative can't be correct, right? I think Shea has been awesome this year. I think Luka has caught up at least through the other guys on that list, but it's definitely a part of it for sure. I don't think even if Luka sweeps OKC these next few days, I don't think that changes who wins MVP. He might jump to second, but narrative definitely is part of it. The narratives are kind of created earlier, and reality doesn't really catch up until later in the season. So narrative is definitely a huge part of it to me.
I agree, because I think back on this season, and I think one of the big narratives with Shea had been at some point earlier in the year, there was this consensus shift of Shea has passed Jokic as the best player in the NBA, because I think Jokic has had the crown from 2022, 23 through last year, or maybe even this year, depending on where you want to put him. But it felt like at some point during the beginning to middle portion of the season, there was this shift of no, Shea's past Jokic. Shea's now the guy. Shea's the best player in the league. And I think that sort of cemented him as the MVP favorite. And I think that's been sort of a narrative that's been out there of last year. Yeah. Shea, they won a bunch of games. He had impressive numbers, but Jokic was the best player. This year, he actually took that mantle from him, and now Shea's the best guy. I think that's been part of the Shea narrative. But then I look at the Wemby situation, and Wemby states his case to be the MVP, and overnight the odds go from, I think he went from a plus 1,900 to plus 900. And he's just continued to drop in terms of better odds to win MVP. So
right.
I feel like Wemby was not really. I mean, Luka has certainly risen in the race, at least from a national public perspective. But Wemby kind of came out of nowhere, where I think a lot of the conversation was Shea, Jokic, and Luka, and then Wemby kind of jumped from maybe a distant fourth into all of a sudden now being almost a 1B. In the situation behind Shea being 1A. So I do think narrative plays a bit here. People calling him the face of the NBA. I think narrative does play a role in the award for sure.
Yeah, and I give Wemby credit. This is a very aware individual in terms of what's going on and how to steer the conversation. Spurs also, I think, went 19-2 or something like that. They just ran off a streak of wins that I'm sure helped in this. But yeah, definitely narrative is part of it. I think Wemby understood that and made his case, and that's obviously working. Luka decided not to do that. He said, I'm just going to let the play do the talking. He looks kind of annoyed at the MVP conversation. So both guys kind of went in different routes with that. But yeah, narrative is a huge, part of it. If you can take that narrative earlier in the season, I think that's what Shea did. The Thunder started absurd. They were on pace, I believe, to break that 72 game win the win record, or the 73, excuse me. The Warriors have it now. 73 wins, and obviously injuries kind of came in and changed their goals for the season. But Shea has kind of kept that number one spot with his play for MVP.
Then a couple of just points here. So Rip Van Winkle says if Luka gets March Player of the Month, he would have more Player of the Months than SGA. So one really interesting thing with the Player of the Month right now is that each of the four MVP candidates has won a Player of the Month. So I believe it was Wemby won February, Luka won January. So I think it went Shea. Yeah, Shea won October, November.
Makes sense.
Jokic won December. Luka won January, Wemby won February. But yeah, whichever one of those 4 guys wins the player of the month. Right now, I'd probably put the odds at like Luka 1, Wemby 2, Shea 3, Jokic 4. I think that's how I would order it in terms of most likely to win. That player will have the second player of the month, which might end up shifting the conversation a bit in terms of this guy won it twice, everyone else won it once. Like, that's, a little feather in your cap.
Yeah. JJ mentioned that, Luka's kind of been the MVP for 2/3 of the season. To him, he started the year with all those 40-point games, and obviously this last stretch. Maybe, the second player of the month kind of pushes him to the second spot. I just don't think you're overtaking Shea at all for MVP, but maybe that puts him, finishing second in the MVP conversation.
Then Mishra notes, Jovan and Raj, did you see Jaylen Brown actually strongly praising Luka on his Twitch stream? NBA stars disagree with the national media. At least that's the vibe. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see what he said, so I'm going to pull that up here right now. Did you see what he said on his stream?
I did not know. I do know that he's doing Twitch streams. I saw him kind of put that out, but I did not see exactly what he said, or if he kind of took himself out of it. I'm not sure.
He said, I see a quote here of that boy Luka is something different, bro. And then I don't think they have text for the whole. Yeah.
Okay.
That's just one of the parts of it. But Jaylen Brown giving him his flowers. What was interesting to me, and this is probably where, like, I think if we're going by, part of what makes Luka so fun and such a showman is like Luka is brash and Luka is, he's in your face and he's trash talking opponents. He's trash talking the crowd. He's trash talking refs. He's trash talking fans of the front row seat, right? Getting into it with certain guys. And like, because I remember like with the All-Star voting, they asked the players to vote, and I think Luka was like 6th in that, which really surprised me of that he was so low. But then I kind of equated it to a lot of guys probably don't like Luka because he's busted their ass and then he's talking shit to them during the whole time out there. So that probably rubs some guys the wrong way. Where like Shea, I think he gets some of the backlash with the foul stuff. Jokic doesn't say anything out there. And then Wemby's had a little bit more of that like showman kind of, pumping his chest out a little bit here lately. But like, I think he's also a little bit more mild mannered. So I feel like Luka's the one that's a little bit the most out there in terms of his like on court character that I could see it rubbing players the wrong way. But Jaylen Brown giving him his flowers and that's well deserved.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think he's been the best player in the league the last month. I'm sure I'm not sure how many stars feel that way, but at least Jaylen Brown seems like he does. But yeah, I like that point of he's very brash and will show off. And I like that he plays into the crowd. He understands that this is entertainment and he's one of the entertainers and kind of fills that role. Jokic goes the complete opposite way, right? Doesn't say anything or do anything. Jokic can drop 55 and you wouldn't know it. You'll just run back on the court. I think Shea has a little bit to it. Shea does it kind of in the post games and all that kind of interesting stuff. Wemby, I think, does it to an extent, and I feel like he's kind of growing within that. But Luka's definitely the most kind of rash out of the 4 MVPs right now.
And then a couple more here before we get out of here, and these two are related. So Sky Falcon 5 says, Jovan, do you think Luka needs to win a championship first before he'll be taken seriously as an MVP? Seems like too many media guys don't buy his style of play. And then Connor Phillips follows up, is Luka the first player to have voter fatigue before actually winning anything? So I will say, I'm curious to hear what you think about this.
Yeah.
I do think there's a segment of people who don't like the heliocentric nature to his game, and not even like putting like fan opinions aside, but just when I talk to people in the media, I think there are just people who think he's a ball hog, or he shoots too much, or he takes bad shots, and then you contrast that with, I mean, it's pretty crazy for his usage and his volume. He has efficient numbers, but like then you look at some of the efficiency splits of, Shea and Jokic having high true shooting. Like I don't really put Wemby there because he's a lower usage offensive guy. He's not on the same level as those guys offensively, but I think that is like there's a segment of people who just don't like how he plays, and I think no matter, unless he changes how he plays, which I don't think is going to happen because he's played the same way since he entered the league and he's been great at it and he's had success with it. I think there will just be some people like, to me, I haven't uncorked this take yet, but and it's interesting that they both were Lakers. I've started to view Luka as like almost the successor to Kobe in a way of like, his game is so polarizing that there just are people who, despite the objective like greatness and the skill and the talent and like and the production and the winning and all like everything collectively, they're just people who don't like the style of play and are just not going to give him the respect. I think we saw that with Kobe and the MVP race throughout his career, and just like the way Kobe has been talked about at times and the way he's been perceived at times. I feel like there's like Luka has kind of suffered from some of that as well. Obviously, two different players, two different styles of play, but there still is a little bit of that of like, for whatever reason, Luka rubs some people the wrong way. And I think that has been held against him.
100% right. And I think the run through the finals was great, but the way they lost in the finals, and I think and this is something, again, I touched on this earlier, watching him in person is such a stark difference than on TV. They will zoom in on the refs, right? They'll just zoom in on him talking to the refs. There's a little bit of that as well. So I agree with that. He can only win if he wins. I like the Kobe comp. My favorite kind of, I don't know, criticism, but the kind of things I hear, well, if he's cold, he should, not shoot anymore. Or like, if he's cold, he should pass the ball up. And that's just not how these scorers operate. That's just not how they think. Kobe went 6 for 24 in a finals game, right? In game 7, this is kind of the mentality I think that Luka brings with it as well. He's, the amount of tough shots he takes, and are they tough shots? Absolutely. I think like in a regular context, they are tough shots, but this is the type of shot diet that he does, and like, he's one of the best in the world at it. Is it heliocentric? Definitely. I do think his playmaking goes a little bit under the radar with that. The scoring dominates a lot of the conversation, but the shots he creates for other teammates, I think, Iztok, mentioned this before, that like the percentage of, I guess, the high quality type of shots he creates for teammates is as good as anyone in the league. He himself takes tough shots, but that's kind of opening stuff for other guys. So yeah, again, his play style can be rough. I do think when the jumper is not falling, Jovan, it can look a little ugly, right? That's how you get stuff like in Detroit, where I think he went 11 for 30 from the field, where some of those shots are really settling.
I think it was 12 for 30, but
12 for 30, right?
It's very similar,
right. And so I think that's where you kind of see some of the settling come in, the contests, the contested type of jump shots. But that's what I think is what's been so awesome this last few months or month of the season, is the intentionality that he's playing with. He's in a flow on the offensive end where he's taking what the defense gives him, and we'll see how it kind of translates once the playoffs start. But there's definitely a contingent of people who are kind of put him in the James Harden class of this will never work, and I just think he's better than James Harden, and so we'll see how it kind of works out. But there's definitely people who don't like his game for sure.
But to answer the question, I don't know if he has to win a championship, but I think that would change the perception of him, right? Like, I mean, at that point, you're just a hate. Like, well, I think some people are just a hater anyway, but like,
sure,
if you're still nitpicking or heavily criticizing him after winning a title, then I think at that point it's like you just don't like the guy, and you can be honest about it. I don't think it's to win a championship to win MVP. I think based on the way things have shifted, like it's kind of shifted back to some degree to like best player on best team. So if the Lakers can have a season, maybe as soon as next season, where they are a 58 to 62 win team and Luka's putting up the same numbers, then like I think there's even stronger case than there is right now. But like that would be the only thing I could think of is like, maybe being the top seed or top 2 seed and that being closer to 60 wins. Like that's all I can really think of. Otherwise, of course the championship would help, but I mean, and then the voter fatigue. Yeah. I mean, it is, I think that goes back more to some people not liking the style of play rather than, but that's sort of an element of voter fatigue.
100%. I think if they were like they're 10 games back or whatever against Oklahoma City, if the Lakers were closer in that race and were able to get the 2 seed, I think this is a much different conversation. But the win loss is just too far for him to win it this year. So yeah, if they're 1 or 2 seed, I think he has it. I think his numbers are more than MVP level. Like you look at his numbers for the season, you look at what he's done as of late, the high scoring games, the 60 plus on a second night of a back-to-back, carrying a roster that, again, I think this is really important to note, that was seen as a 46 win team healthy. And so that team also, this team has lost LeBron, Austin, and himself for over 50 games. I believe in 50 games, at least one of them did not play. And to still be at this 3 seed, I think is impressive. So but we'll see. I don't think it's voter fatigue yet. We'll see if the Lakers have better seasons and how he's voted on. But for right now, I think he's gonna kind of stay at this 3-4 spot.
It's been interesting too because I think he's been the preseason MVP favorite in like 2 of the last 3 years, right? Like, I think there was a year in like maybe going into that final Dallas season, and then this year some places had him as the MVP favorite. So it's like interesting that there is this collective anticipation and buzz for like Luka and the season he's about to have, and then he has a great season and it doesn't materialize in the MVP. Then we got 2 super chats here, and then we will wrap. Lakers 702. Thank you for the super chat. Do you think Wemby and SGA will play in their final games against Denver because of the MVP race? It could make a difference in our seeding. So on that note, I think Wemby's at 60 games, if I'm not mistaken, and he's playing right now. So Wemby only has to play in 4 more games, and San Antonio has 6 more games. So Wemby might be able to rest that. Shea is at 64. He'll be at 65 tomorrow against the Lakers. So Shea could also rest that as well. So yeah, I mean, if it's locked up, that's the interesting thing too with the Lakers Thunder matchup is if the Lakers beat the Thunder at least one of the 2 games, if not both, that makes it more likely that they play OKC in round 2, which like on the one hand, you have more confidence in the matchup. On the other hand, I still would probably rather play San Antonio than OKC in round 2. But I think if things play out the way that they're trending in terms of just OKC standing pat at number 1 and San Antonio remaining at number 2, I could see them. And Denver plays San Antonio, so that's another, like they play them twice. So April 4th is the first one, and if they beat San Antonio, that creates now a 3-game gap in terms of the loss column. Depending on what happens with the Lakers as well, where that could ice it, where they just rest them against Denver. But yeah, I mean, I think Lakers are gonna be okay and get the 3 seed, but certainly they probably need to win at least one of the OKC games, if not definitely beat Phoenix to maintain the number 3 seed.
Yeah, I feel like they have a pretty good cushion on the 3, even with the win-loss where they are in terms of what games are left. But that's all going to be decided by if OKC or San Antonio has the seeding locked up. I'm sure whoever locks up the 1 seed is going to start resting their players whenever that comes to get ready for the playoffs. So those could be huge games, or SGA and Wemby will just hit that game.
Then last one from Is He a Real One? Veda Real MC. Thank you for the super chat. Wish you defended Luka more when Jason was giving those wild MVP takes. Still love you though. What months this season was Wemby better than Luka? Well, on the first point, like I mean, Jason's my guy, so I'm never gonna go at him. We have had debate on the show about Luka and about the MVP race and about the offense and the defense. I think sometimes, especially during the Q&A portion, one of us only speaks. So like I'll answer a question, he'll answer a question, we alternate. So I don't always get to follow up and give a follow-up to it. But, I don't know if you're talking about his take today or I know Like if it's the Twitter stuff, I don't get involved. Like that's that's his Twitter account. He could say what he wants and get into it with whoever he wants to. But that's my teammate, and I hear you though, and I think I've tried to stick up for Luka, but I know for some people I could do it even more. And then the last one here: what months this season was Wemby better than Luka? Not March. I guess technically he won Player of the Month in February, and I would say Luka is like, if we were ranking Luka's season by months, I think December would be last, and I think February would be second to last. And I'd probably rank it March, January, November, February, December. That would be my, and November, October kind of combined. But like, I think that would be my Luka ranking. He won Player of the Month in January. I think he would have won in March. He still might win in March, but like you add in the final 2 weeks of the season now, that extends it to like a 6-week period. But that's definitely been his best month. January, second, and then I would say November, February, December. So maybe you could argue, I think December could be fair to argue like that was certainly not the best month for Luka. February, technically Wemby won, but even if we're being like generous here and saying Wemby was better in December and February, I still would pick Luka in March, January, November. And in general, just to be clear on this, like I do have Luka ahead of Wemby. I think that's probably my most controversial take, is like, or for some people controversial, because people are anointing Wemby at a certain level right now. And I want to see it in the playoffs first. And then if we see it in the playoffs, that's a different conversation. But like under 30 minutes per game, plus like just being unproven and being so young, it's not even a knock on Wemby. It's just like, I've seen Luka lead a team to the finals. I've seen what Luka is in the playoffs. I think, if I needed to pick between the two, I would pick Luka. So, again, I think if we're doing the boxing scorecard, it's at least 3-2 Luka, if not 4-1.
Yeah, I don't know Wemby's months that closely. I would have given him February, just with how the Lakers kind of played out in that month, and he's been pretty consistent in terms of his impact on the defensive end. What I'm interested to see is a 40-minute Wemby game, like when it matters, right? Can he scale up to that point? I think that's very interesting. That's something that the Spurs, are going to have to deal with. But I think Luka's I think you've mentioned it, Luka's just been better this season, and Luka's been in the league longer, more experience, all that stuff combined. Wemby is at an absurd place. He's way ahead of schedule, I'm sure, wherever that was supposed to be. He breaks basketball in ways that, normal people don't, just the way he's able to dominate the geography of the court because of his length and defensive production. But Luka's had a better season. I'm with you. I think he's ahead. And I have him second in the MVP. I'm not going to argue with anyone that has any of the other four. I think there are cases for every guy in this place, and you are splitting hairs here because these are the best players in the league. Like, these are all guys that if they're the best player on your team, if you have them on your team, you have a chance to do something in the playoffs. And the Lakers have one of them.
Yeah, so looking at it quickly, like I think December and February were like the only 2 months you could potentially argue. So December, Wemby played 9 games. Luka played 9. Luka averaged 31, 7, and 8, but 44% shooting, 29% on threes. So rough shooting month for him, 57% true shooting percentage. And the Lakers had a negative net rating with him on 40% usage. Whereas Wemby, again, 9 games, 22, 10, and 3. 67% true shooting percentage plus 21 net rating. That's absolutely absurd. So like maybe you could argue December, and then February, Wemby won Player of the Month, 22, 11, and 3.5. Another monster net rating, 61% true shooting. But Luka in February only played 8 games, so Wemby actually had the games advantage in that month. But Luka 27, 7.5 and 7.5, which like for his standards is lower, and 58% true shooting. So like that was another rough shooting month where he shot 44% overall. But again, if you're even being like the most generous version of this, I think it's still 3-2 Luka. So I mean, yeah, I think Luka's just a better player, and I have Luka ahead in the MVP race. But
yeah, no,
it's
I agree.
close though. Like, to be clear, like I love Wemby. I really like Wemby. I like what he's about. I like the brash confidence to be part of his MVP argument was we almost swept OKC. Like he's talking his talk at the podium. Like I like that. I like Wemby. It's just, well, I mean, we might see it in the second round. We'll see who wins that series, who plays better, and that might solve that. But
yeah, I like that he's very self-aware, and I like that he's not too cool for school in terms of, he has all these kind of moments. He shows emotion. I like that about him. I just think the minutes for him, the 29 minutes, that's just too low of a bar for someone of these type of awards that should be protected. There should be some kind of baselines that you must reach as efficient and as dominant, and how absurd he's been in those minutes. I still think that's just a lot lower than, the players that he's kind of going up against for these type of awards. But no, Wemby is ridiculous. It's going to be his league soon, sooner than later. So yeah, he's very early.
Yeah, it's going to be. And Paul said, second round, Jovan. Really, you haven't even won the first round. I said potentially in the second round. If I did not say potentially, I meant to say potentially. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Lakers in round one. But Raj, appreciate the time. We went far over. I hope you had no appointments or anything to do tonight. But this was great. We'll definitely have to have you on either around the start of the playoffs or maybe around game 2, game 3 when the Lakers are making their adjustments. We could talk through it. But so we're going to plug Lakers Detailed. You're obviously on Lakers Lounge, Offside, Silver Screen and Roll. Anything else you want to plug before we get out of here? And I'll make sure to link to all that in the show notes.
No, I do these Lakers Today film breakdowns every day. You can follow me at on Twitter, on X at Raj Chipalu. This was fun. I'm excited, to go to a playoff game. Never been to a Laker playoff game before, so excited about that.
It's gonna be very fun.
Yeah.
So as long as it's not like game 1 against Minnesota, it'll be very fun.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully it's a little bit more fun than that. But I think
the atmosphere is great.
Yeah, I think this team is legit, Jovan, and in whatever way that word means, I think this is a legit basketball team. And yeah, I'm excited for what the playoffs can bring.
Awesome, man. Well, appreciate the time, and shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to the chat. I'll be back in about 24 hours, actually a little bit less, about 24 hours or so after Lakers Thunder. Really excited for that game. Huge game for LA, measuring stick game, and we will learn a lot about this team for better or worse. Hopefully for better, but shout out to the chat. Appreciate you all. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I will talk to you all then. Shout out to the Late Night Gang.